Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back from your little break. And I'm sure everybody didn't have much of a break because there was a million other things you want to do. Since we left last, Senator Kitchell inherited another $1.3 billion. So, anybody wants money, just give her a call. And she has a list. So whatever you need, it's right, Senator?
Yeah, all right. And I wish I had full discretion about how we wanted to spend it.
Like I said this morning earlier, she's going to be very popular here. Everybody's going to be lining up at the front door.
Yeah, stand in line.
Well, okay. Welcome. And again, our first order of business this morning, excuse me, is S40. And as you know, that's the color lamps on fire departments, the blue light special. And Anthea, you're with us this morning, I believe.
I am.
Okay. What should we know this morning on this bill? Anything we should know that's different, or is it ready for prime time, or what?
So when we last left, I was given directions on a proposed strike all amendment, and that is posted to the committee's page along with a 3-column side-by-side that compares the strike all amendment to the as introduced version. And then it also compares it to H56, which is the somewhat companion bill from the House. So I think probably as a refresher, I could walk through the 3x3 side by side.
That would be great, because I know the House, excuse me, has a bill which they have worked on for many, many years. And Butch from Pittsford, Butch Shaw, has been very instrumental in that bill, and he's pretty excited about it. So anyway, go right ahead. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Liz, for giving me share access. So you should now see a 3-column document. Hopefully that's on everyone's screen. So the column all the way to the left, that's the Senate version, S40 as introduced, and the column all the way to the right is H56 as introduced. So those columns should look very familiar. That's not new to the committee, but S40 as proposed to be amended corresponds with the strike all amendment that is posted to the committee's page for the same date. So the changes between the 3 versions are sort of and in between, that's why it's the middle column, but it's almost H56 with some small differences. So the main difference between S40, the Senate version, and H56, the House version, was the House version expanded to also allow for additional lighting on law enforcement vehicles, to allow law enforcement vehicles to also have a red signal lamp. And then in both instances, for the change for law enforcement and the change for emergency service vehicles, the fire ones, it also allowed for an amber lamp or a combination of the two. So the first change that you would see in the strike all amendment is taking all of the language from H56. So it's saying that sirens, blue signal lamps, or blue and white signal lamps, or a combination thereof, may be authorized for all law enforcement vehicles owned or leased by a law enforcement agency, a certified law enforcement officer, or the Vermont Justice Council. That is not a change from current law. Subdivision B at the bottom, this is your change from current law. It would be allowing a red signal lamp or an amber signal lamp, or a combination thereof, may be authorized for all law enforcement vehicles owned or leased by a law enforcement agency, a certified law enforcement officer, or the Vermont Criminal Justice Council, provided that the commissioner, and this is the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, shall require the lamp or lamps be mounted so as to be visible primarily from the rear of the vehicle. That is the same as H56. And then here is your one difference that will remain between the Senate version, if you go with the strike all amendment, and the House version, is that it is only used when the vehicle is parked, whereas the House version would allow for this additional red or red and amber signal lamp to be used in instances other when the vehicle is parked. And then the change in subdivision C is just adding the designation there, but no substantive change. The language for purposes of the allowance for your emergency service vehicles, this is the same as the main crux of S40 as it was introduced, is allowing that combination. So S40 as it was introduced over in the column all the way to the left only allowed the one blue signal lamp to be used on the rear of the vehicle, primarily visible from the rear and only used when parked. This would allow a blue signal lamp or an amber signal lamp or a combination of the two. And that's to align with H56. And then the only other difference that will remain between S40 and H56 is this and only used when the vehicle is parked language. So you'll be maintaining what S40 had, which is requiring that this only be used when parked, whereas H56 would allow it in other instances as well. And then one thing that's important to point out here, just as a reminder from last week, even though there's no change here, is this isn't all fire emergency service vehicles. The blue or blue and amber signal lamp would only be allowed on a subset of them because it's only the vehicles that are owned or leased by a fire department that you've got down. Oh, I'm highlighting too much. So the bottom of the second page into the top of the third page where it says a vehicle owned or leased by a fire department, whereas the allowance for the red or red and white signal lamps that's in current law, that would also apply to volunteer firefighters, voluntary rescue squad. So the blue light would have a more limited usage than the red and white lights currently have. No changes in subdivision 3. I don't think you need to include subdivisions 4, 5, and 6, so we can keep our stars there. And then the only other change to point out is in current law, there is a prohibition on having amber signal lamps on a vehicle that has a siren. So it says amber signal lamps shall be used on road maintenance vehicles, service vehicles, and wreckers, and shall be used on all registered snow removal equipment when in use for moving snow on public highways. And the amber lamp shall be mounted so as to be visible from all sides of the motor vehicle. A vehicle equipped with a signal lamp may not, this is current law, may not be issued a permit for the installation and use of a siren. But since you're expanding the lights to be these combination lights in both instances, there would then be that weird instance where you're saying, you, law enforcement vehicle, can have an amber signal lamp, but then it conflicts with existing law that says you can't have an amber signal lamp on a vehicle that has a permit for a siren. So this is just fixing that inconsistency and instead saying that road maintenance vehicles, service vehicles, and wreckers may not be issued a permit for the installation and use of a siren, which makes sense if you want to limit the siren usage to law enforcement and emergency service vehicles, which I think is the underlying intent through existing law and these changes.
When Colonel Birmingham was in, was he under the impression that it would only be when the vehicle is stopped, or did he, I don't recall, did he want it to be used at other times?
Yeah, that was my question, Senator Mazza, going back to that section on law enforcement.
Yeah.
I know that we had the stopped when it related to the blue light,
Right.
but this extends it to the law enforcement use. And
I understand they're using it, in some areas are using it presently. Rutland, I think they are.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering about having that stopped requirement
Right.
for the law enforcement.
Colonel isn't available today, or I just want to make it clear before we move ahead. I want to clear that up. That's one issue.
So my recollection of Colonel Birmingham's testimony was that he didn't really weigh in on the language in H56, which is the one that had that difference. But he also, I don't believe, weighed in on having this extended to the the red lights on the law enforcement
Right.
vehicles. That was something that came up in testimony, I believe, when Tony Fakos was here and said that the DMV didn't see why you wouldn't go with the H56 language that would have the sort of corollary allowance.
Because we are so close on this bill, I would like to have a verification from the Colonel to see exactly what his thoughts are on our redraft. And the other issue I had was, Jane, do you have some other comments just on that issue?
No, it was that requirement to be stopped relative to the use of the lights with law enforcement. I really would feel more comfortable getting confirmation on that.
I would like to hear that. And the other issue, as you put the chart back up, there was a question on one light versus a light. Uh,
So I believe that also came from Director Fakos. The language in both of the bills.
oh yeah, it says
Has
one
it-
blue light and a blue light. What, why not one blue light?
Oh, so it still is, it's just this is just a grammar thing.
Okay, okay.
Because it's a blue signal lamp or an amber signal lamp. But you have an excellent memory because Director Fakos and I believe someone else testified about, and we're now getting out of my base knowledge of how these lights work. Sometimes they're bar lights, so it wouldn't
Yep,
just be a
yep.
single light, it would be multiple lights. And this language would not allow for that. So it could be that you're being more restrictive than you intend to be in terms of when they're ordering their replacement vehicles for sort of what's the standard iteration of lights on the rear of the vehicles.
We did have some testimony around the percentage so that you wouldn't, I remember so that if on you had a bar, it would, not exceed a certain percentage or whatever. So it would be good. I wish my memory were clearer on that, but it would be good to, unless somebody else has got a more specific recollection.
Well, I just want to make sure we're allowing one blue light and not, a bunch of them across the whole back of the fire truck or something. So,
I think I'm gonna put up an amendment in there. Maybe we'll get disco ball on there. That's what it's getting down to.
So
this is a very important piece of legislation, and I think we got to be careful how we handle this one. Like I said, it's been around for a long time, and I'm just afraid there's going to be a lot of abuse here unless we tighten this as tight as we can.
So I think if the intent is to have it be a signal lamp, one signal lamp, or either a blue one or a blue and amber one, or a red one or a red and amber one, that this language does that. I think if you wanted to provide more flexibility in terms of what Senator Kitchell's recollection is, which aligns with my recollection, and I wish I remembered more of the details, doing sort of a percentage of bar lighting, I do not think you have that flexibility with this language. And it could be that there are entities that would like more flexibility on this language.
Okay, questions? Any more questions of Senator Perchlik on? Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So my question is somewhat to Senator Perchlik. You know, you're a firefighter, or that have been in the past, and that you were the one that introduced this. So I thought that what I heard from Ken Morton is that they were only interested in having the blue light when they're parked, because their biggest concern is getting hit while they're on scene at a road accident. And so that's why the park was really not inspired from the colonel, but instead from the fire services. They just want a blue light to catch the eye when they're parked in dangerous locations along the roadway. Is that consistent with what your understanding is, Senator Perchlik?
Yes, that is. But the reason the House bill has it differently is because, and we heard testimony from the assistant chief there that there are some truck manufacturers, and maybe all of them, I don't know, that wire all the lights together. So you turn on the lights, the blue light comes on, and it's difficult to rewire it to where you don't have the blue light coming on. The fire truck, from my old fire department, that wasn't an issue for them, but maybe it's just an older truck. So they could have that distinct for parking. So I don't know how. The testimony was that newer trucks are going to have an issue with having it separate. But I do remember the colonel saying, he seemed to be saying he was supportive because it was only when the truck was parked. So I was willing to go along with the state police and say, the law changes, you can't have a blue light, but only when parked.
That's on the fire trucks.
On the fire trucks, yeah. I don't know if anybody cares if the police cars have red lights when they're moving. Or not.
That's separation. But the fire truck, we understand it's when it's parked on the rear, there will be one blue light. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the goal.
But you're saying they're wired so they have it on all the time?
That was the testimony we heard. I don't know enough to know if that's all how prevalent that is, and that the way they're wired, it's difficult to, it's not just like you follow the wire back. It's more complicated electronics. So they were saying it's going to be difficult for them to make it to where they can only use it when it's blue. I mean, maybe there's a workaround, you know, you have a cover over it and you take it off when you get there. But, you know, I was just going to stick with the way it was introduced. And I know it's a change. And since the police said that they were supportive of it when it was parked, I wanted to start from there and see what happens.
So you think it might be challenged that the trucks, when they order them, comes through with the light automatically. So what do we do then?
Well, if this was to pass, they couldn't turn on that light. That's why they're moving. They'd have to figure it out, or, you know, we would.
I just don't think they're gonna figure it out. I just
No.
don't.
No.
I think it's gonna be a mess,
Yep.
a mess.
Yep, that's my worry about it. And I think this, that's why I want to, now I haven't heard this about the wiring problem. I had not heard that. Maybe I missed it at the time they were in there. Who do we have from the fire association? Do we have a head division or something that can guarantee there's one light? Who can we contact?
We could contact the same people we had came and testify from the Vermont Professional Firefighters Association and other. And they could talk about how prevalent it is. I mean, it is only one light. The question is whether they can turn it off separate from the other lights that they have on when they're running. Can they have it just as a parked light or not? And I guess it'd be good if we could check in with the colonel and see how much of an issue that is. He did say that he liked that part of the bill, that it was parked, but I don't know if it's a deal.
Well, let's get the colonel back and we'll get we got a House bill coming anyway, so we want to get it out. There's no doubt about it, but we got a House bill that's pretty close to what we got. So anyway,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I do think, you know, we've heard from law enforcement, we've heard from motor vehicles, but we haven't really, you know, here's a bill that has been a priority for firefighters. At least that's how it's been presented to us for a number of years. And I do think we need to hear from them. I don't recollect, did we have testimony from them?
Several.
Who came?
somebody
Well,
from South Burlington, I think.
from the Senator Chittenden's old chief from Williston. We had the
Okay.
assistant chief from Pittsburgh. That's
Oh,
also
okay.
on the-
All right. I must, maybe that was when I was out getting, I don't know, something.
and
Okay.
we had
Chittenden
permanent
County,
firefighting.
Chittenden County folks came in. Those folks from Chittenden County, specifically South Burlington, I think it was. I don't recall.
In Rutland. It seems to be a Chittenden County. in Rutland.
Yeah, that's right. Chittenden County and Rutland. Senator Chittenden. Sorry.
Like that.
Chittenden.
So I didn't invite him. I just know Ken Morton is highly regarded and a recently retired fire chief, and he's from Williston. So it is Chittenden County, but not South Burlington.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Parochial at all.
Yeah,
I just also wanted to say that from the testimony I took, I am very supportive of when parked, and I think having a single light, having some requirement that it be separated. If I am seeing a vehicle drive down towards some sort of emergency that I'm aware about, I don't want to see a blue light unless it's a cop. I think it's important to maintain that distinction, somewhat to addressing Senator Ingalls' concerns and the previous concerns on this. So I'm fully supportive of giving firefighters the ability to slow people down on roadways with a blue light, but I'm hesitant to support language that would allow a fire truck to go down the street with a blue light, because I think it sends an incorrect signal.
No, that's not going to happen. No, I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think the House wants it. I don't want that. And I think others share the same feeling.
Oh, who's gonna police it? I mean, that's the thing. Who's gonna police it? I mean, it's just gonna be one of these things that, you know, I just look at it. Blue is for police, red is for emergencies, amber's for caution. Who's gonna police this thing? Nobody. Nobody's gonna police it. They're just gonna turn these lights on and away we go. I mean, I know that you know, I have the utmost respect for law enforcement. I was chair of the Orleans ambulance unit. I have respect for all those guys. They just work tirelessly, and it is dangerous. But this is just a can of worms. It's just, we're going to have lights flashing all over the place. Like I said, we might as well have a disco ball in the back of that truck.
Okay, we'll slow down.
Certainly.
We'll take some further testimony and continue our discussion. We want to get this right. And if it's going to go, we want to make sure it's as perfect as we can be. Because I know in the future, it's going to be opened up greater than what it is today. It's just a foot in the door, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. Okay, unless there's any other questions on this bill, we're going to move on. And are we prepared for S47 at this time, Anthea?
So
Liz?
what you have is a proposal from Veda, and while I certainly can walk through the language,
Sure.
it's not my language, and I think
Okay.
you're probably going to get a better overview from other people on the call.
Okay, sure, let's do that. Is the committee ready? Because we've, the dealers, as you recall, a week or so ago, got together and they had someone propose some language, and I have not seen it, but I understand they have some language and for the committee to review. And Anthea, if you want to take us through that, I'm glad to do it.
So Senator Mazza,
Yes, go right ahead.
I think what I understood Anthea saying is that I think it would be better if we heard directly from VADA first, because
Okay,
then they can present the language and
All
go
right.
through.
okay, are they
They can walk
prepared
us
at this
through
time?
and then Anthea can respond after that. I think.
Okay, good. Are they prepared at this time? I know we're running a little early. Are they prepared?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're good.
Yes,
Okay.
They're very eager.
All
Yep.
right,
Yep, we're here.
all right. Turn it
Um,
over to them. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Mazza and members of the committee. My name is Claire Buckley. I work at Leonine Public Affairs, and I'm a lobbyist for the Vermont Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association. And today I have joining us, or we all have joining us, Marilyn Miller, who's the executive director of VADA, and Mitchell J., a dealer and a member of VADA, and Bob Cody, who's our president of for VADA, two dealers. And what I thought I would do is present the 7 policy areas that our proposal addresses briefly, hopefully briefly. But I do have Bob Cody and Mitchell J. here to help me if you have questions about specifically how these areas work in dealerships. They would probably be the person better to answer that question. So we, as the chair mentioned, the dealers have been struggling with this issue now for over a year, and we have met many times and discussed this. And today we are VADA is prepared to offer a package as a compromise that seeks a balance between direct to consumer manufacturers of zero emission vehicles who want to enter Vermont's market, both to sell and have warranty and service centers here, to basically balance the needs between those folks and the dealers who are here and have been here for years, and to ensure that the franchise dealers in the state and their significant investment in Vermont and contributions to the Vermont economy can continue. So really, we see this as a package and a balance between those two needs. So there are 7 policy areas proposed in the bill, the draft bill that we have offered as a compromise. And I sent that to Liz, and I also have an overview of these 7 areas that I've submitted to the committee, and I'm going to go through those if that would be helpful.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the first one deals with the whole issue of direct to consumer sales. And it would add a definition of non-franchise zero emission motor vehicle manufacturers to address this new category of motor vehicle manufacturers that don't utilize franchise dealers and that manufacture zero emission vehicles. The definition is then used to clarify the permissible operations of these non-franchised zero emission motor vehicle manufacturers in the state, in contrast with the permissible activities of a motor vehicle manufacturer who has contracted with a franchise dealer to sell and service their products. And to be clear, the non-franchised emission motor vehicle manufacturer must be registered as a dealer in Vermont to sell vehicles in Vermont and to own and operate directly a warranty and service center. And so the basic provisions that I believe were in S47 are addressed in this proposal, as I understood S47 and its intent. There are other states that do this, including New York has a definition of zero emission motor vehicle manufacturer. I would also say that the report that this committee commissioned AOT to do over the summer and fall also contains an entire summary of all the state laws in this area. So that could be used as a reference. So that's the first area, and there's 6 more that I'd like to move on to. So if folks don't have any questions, I will move on to the second one, which is, and the rest of them are all related to the franchise law in order to seek that balance that we're talking about. So the second one would be facility requirements and vendor requirements. Manufacturer facility upgrades have grown over the years, and in some cases, the plans change every few years. And if a dealer fails to comply, it can cause a dealer to forego per vehicle incentives, which create a competitive disadvantage in vehicle pricing. So what this section does is it places the burden on the manufacturer to demonstrate to the dealer that the dealer will obtain a return on the facility investment proposed by the manufacturer. If a dealer chooses to move forward with the facility change, a dealer is provided a 10-year window of time within which the dealer is considered in compliance with the manufacturer's facility image requirements before being obligated to expend significant capital on a new facility upgrade. New Hampshire has a 15-year grandfather period for facility renovations, and New York has a 10-year grandfather period for facility renovations. And both states require the manufacturer to demonstrate the reasonableness of any requested facility change. And related to this is vendor requirements, which basically when a manufacturer also requires a dealer to often to utilize sole source suppliers for certain construction materials and renovation items. And this requirement substantially raises the cost of a facility upgrade. And in many cases, there are lower cost suppliers, some within the state, for the same products. So what this section would do is it would prohibit a manufacturer from allowing a dealer to utilize a supplier of the dealer's choosing, as long as the product is of like kind and quality as the product required by the manufacturer. And New Hampshire and New York have similar provisions. And when I say these states that have similar provisions, there could well be more, but we've just looked locally to give a few examples. So I will move on to the third policy area, if that's what the committee would like me to do, which is warranty and pre-delivery obligations. So in this section, Vermont's law currently allows a manufacturer to compensate a motor vehicle dealer for warranty work at the equivalent of the market-based repair rates charged by the dealer. But manufacturers have made it difficult for dealers to obtain the proper increase to their warranty reimbursement rates. And this section would clarify the formula used for establishing the dealer retail labor and parts rate. It also addresses how a dealer is to be reimbursed for handling a part used in a warranty repair, which is provided at no cost to the dealer. New York, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts all use shall instead of the current may in Vermont's law, making the statutory method for retail rate calculation mandatory. And these states, as most do, provide a list of routine maintenance items which are to be excluded from calculations, address parts shipped at no cost to the dealer. And also related to warranty and pre-delivery obligations is another section which would reduce an audit look-back period for a manufacturer from 18 to 12 months for incentive and reimbursement programs. So this is to protect both the manufacturer and the dealer from an audit of incentive monies paid, which would result in a large chargeback. Sales and other incentives have become a large part of compensation paid by manufacturers to dealers. And if there was a mistake made as to whether or not you'd be eligible for an incentive claim, if a manufacturer and a dealer discover a mistake and had to go back over an 18-month period, it could result in a chargeback, which could destroy the financial viability of a dealership. So what we're proposing is to reduce the look back that's already in Vermont law to 12 months. And New Hampshire limits audit and chargeback to 9 months, and New York and Massachusetts limit it to 1 year. And so the fourth policy area that we are proposing that include in this package is an unreasonable standard. And the revisions to this section clarify that the prohibition on unreasonable standards applied to a motor vehicle dealer by a manufacturer include standards applied in relation to compliance with the franchise agreement, as well as any manufacturer program. And the revisions to the section also make clear that failing to take into consideration a dealer's individual market circumstances in applying those standards is considered unreasonable. New York prohibits the application of unreasonable standards to a dealer. And the fifth area is a new motor vehicle direct shipper's license. And this, so, you know, as you all know, the requirements in Vermont associated with a registered dealer selling vehicles to residents of the state only apply to dealers selling from a physical location in the state. I think we've all learned that about through the whole direct to consumer debate that we've had over the past year. So the purpose of Vermont's registration process is to ensure that the dealer is educated and trained to complete the proper documentation for the sale and financing of a new motor vehicle, has no criminal background, has adequate dealership sales and service facilities, and is authorized by a new motor vehicle manufacturer to perform the pre-delivery preparation of the vehicle. With the advent of the sale of new motor vehicles over the internet from entities located outside the state can no longer only regulate the sale of new motor vehicles through its dealership registration process to achieve those goals that I just outlined. So in order to continue to ensure the health, safety, and financial well-being of its residents, this new section would require that any entity delivering a new vehicle to a resident within this state demonstrate that they are properly licensed as a new motor vehicle dealer in good standing in another state. The properly licensed dealer seeking a direct shipper's license would also demonstrate that they're not affiliated with the franchise motor vehicle manufacturer, so as to prevent a franchise motor vehicle manufacturer from engaging in the activities of a franchise motor vehicle dealer, and competing directly with its own franchise dealers in the state. A non-franchise zero-emission motor vehicle would not be required to obtain a new motor vehicle direct shipper's license because they would already be registered as a dealer in Vermont. And we are not aware of another state that does this at this time. So I have two more policy areas that are part of the package, and I'm doing it as quick as I can. So the next one is consumer data. And new motor vehicle dealers gather a lot of both potential customer and actual sales and service customer non-public personal information, as well as sensitive information related to the purchase and financing of a vehicle. This proposal creates a definition of consumer data, and it places limitations on a manufacturer's access and use of consumer data obtained from the dealer. It also requires that the manufacturer indemnify the dealer for any damage or penalties sought from a dealer for a violation of the law by the manufacturer or its vendors in using that consumer data. And there are many states that have similar provisions, including Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Oregon, and Virginia. And finally, the last part of the package is competition with dealers. So on this one, over time, franchise motor vehicle manufacturers have used their economic advantage over their franchise motor dealers to insert themselves directly into the relationship with the retail purchaser of a vehicle. So the definition of new motor vehicle dealer is revised in this proposal to clarify the activities that are reserved for the licensed new motor vehicle dealers, including the sale, lease, subscription programs, and the sale of parts to the retail customer. And the bill also clarifies that a franchise motor vehicle manufacturer shall not engage in the activities reserved to a licensed motor vehicle dealer, and makes clear that this prohibition does not apply to non-franchise zero-emission motor vehicle manufacturers. And both New Hampshire and Massachusetts address leases, quote, engaged in the business of selling, and subscription programs in their respective definitions. So I have made it through to the end. I really thank you for your attention, and I would absolutely open it up for questions. And like I said, I have Mitchell and Bob here who are experts in this whole area as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee, you want to start on any section? Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Mazza. Thank you, Claire, for going through that. And I did see this, so the committee knows, Claire did send it to me on Friday afternoon. So I did have a chance to look at it over the weekend and a little bit yesterday. And basically, even though it was said that it was a compromise, I don't see it as a compromise. I see it as a bunch of stuff added onto a bill that is likely to pass. That the underlying S47 is just about opening a service center. And these manufacturers could sell cars. They could open a dealership in Vermont tomorrow. The only thing was they couldn't repair the cars, which is just ridiculous that we allow them to sell the cars in the state, but not let them to repair them. So that was the only thing we're trying to fix. This strike all amendment, new bill, is basically saying, that's fine. We don't have any problems with S47, but here's 7 things that we want that, you know, we might not be able to get otherwise. I think some of them are fine. I think we could probably work with them, but I'm just worried about how complicated some of them are. I'm worried about potential contract clause, constitutional issues. I'm worried about just how much the manufacturers are going to come in and fight and say this is horrible and it has to go to 3 other committees to work through these things. I think similar to what happened to S47 last year, I think these are all very good things that we should study. And they're probably good things for our local dealers to have. I'm just wary about adding them to the bill 3 days before crossover. I think some of them we probably could just tweak them to language like if the definition isn't right, or protecting them. The number 7, the last one that Claire did, which was about just making it clear that the current manufacturers can't undercut the dealers. If there's things like that we could do. But I think that the data pieces and the stuff about, you know, how much they get paid for their warranty services and things like that are just complicated contractual issues that the manufacturers and the dealers have fought over for years. And to add them to this bill, which I think is a very simple bill, it's hard for me to support, but I'm willing to kind of work on them if that's you know what the committee is going to require.
Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So I see everything you presented here, Claire, as well worth studying. I'm just not seeing the direct connection with what Senator Perchlik just laid out, the original discussion about just allowing Teslas to be serviced here. But to move things forward, I'm still the new guy, and I'd welcome ideas on how we can have another bill to address these concerns, because my policy objectives in this discussion are to protect the consumers, protect the dealers' investments here in the state, and also to incent and reward reduced carbon emissions. So I'm seeing in your 7 pieces here achievements of those ends, protecting the consumer and protecting the dealer investments, but I'm not seeing why it has to be tied to this S47, which seems relatively straightforward and short. But if you want to help me understand why they need to be coupled, that would be useful.
Claire, would you like to respond? Or
Sure, sure. Well, like I said, there are many provisions in this that are related to direct shipping. I would say, you know, the direct shipper's license is part of sort of the change in internet sales. I mean, we're really talking about new entrants into Vermont's market, and, you know, the change in the market, and that's certainly, you know, completely related to this topic, as well as, you know, as Senator Perchlik just mentioned, the competition with dealers. We see the facility requirements and vendor requirements. And we've talked a lot about dealer investment in the state of Vermont, and, you know, to ensure that if we're going to change Vermont's motor vehicle franchise law, which we are doing really with much sort of regret, even, you know, offering this as a package, part of it is sort of like trying to balance the needs of DTC manufacturers wanting to come in and those that are here, that have been here for decades and have significant investments in the state. So a lot of the other provisions, you know, the facility and vendor requirements directly relate to that, that investment. And a lot of these provisions directly relate to that investment. Or like the competition with dealers and the direct shippers license relate to, you know, to the internet sales. And as you said, consumer protection is something that we've been working on. And I believe that the consumer data provisions are very much related to consumer protection.
Would you like to have the dealers respond at this time? We have a couple dealers here. Would they like to offer some input at this time? Bob Cody or Jay Mitchell, or Mitchell J, I'm sorry. Can they hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It took me a minute, Senator Mazza, just to
Okay.
find the unmute button here on
Yeah,
Zoom.
okay, that's all right.
You know, certainly as we look at this, I agree the 7 issues, some of them will probably cause a little bit of conversation with the manufacturer, but I also think some of them are important. I mean, we look at consumer data, you know, it's been one I've been pushing, and we've been pushing to the National Auto Dealer Association. You know, if I knew I wasn't going to get sued, I guess I could say, let me give everything about my consumer to these manufacturers. I'm just not sure Vermont consumers would be shocked if they knew what we're giving to the manufacturers. I mean, I've refused to sign an agreement with Chrysler that wants people's dates of birth, interest rates, monthly payments. I mean, they just want everything that I have with these people short of their social security numbers. You know, I think some of those ones, like we talked about, reasonable standards, we were trying to clarify that they have to look at a dealer market area. And to give you an example, there's only probably 2 market areas for my franchise in the state where we have most other vehicle manufacturers. That would be Burlington or Barrie. If you look at a lot of the other areas, whether it be Bennington or Newport, Vermont, they do not have, in all cases, a Mazda and a Subaru and a Toyota dealer and a Nissan dealer. But they measure my standards and are constantly saying I'm underperforming, but they're comparing me to maybe a market area like Newport, where there's 3 domestic dealers and a border that runs across the top half of the circle that they can't sell up into. So, you know, there are some things I think we have some real concerns on. And I do agree, some of those I think are fairly easy to explain, but again, I leave it up to the committee. But, you know, I do have some real concerns with data, and the manufacturer seems to find ways with these facility upgrades. An example with me was Chrysler just decided that the new Jeep Grand Wagoneer requires, in order to get the top 7% rebate, you need to build them a special standalone area in the showroom. I mean, and I think for me, it's a huge expense, but I've seen dealers out there that I know, friends in the country, that just got done building a brand new store, and 1 week after opening the store, they announced their new facility. I mean, they knew it was coming, but they didn't really care. The dealer spent $7 million in this case building a new store to be told now you got to go back and spend about $1 million to renovate your store that's been open for 1 week if you want to get the 7%. So these are real concerns, I think, with the way we get treated sometime and the amount of bargaining power we have. And I think it's real concerns for Vermont consumers, what these manufacturers are asking. And again, I think most consumers would be very unsettled if they realize the manufacturer has or wants to try to attempt to get the amount of information they're asking for.
Do we as a state have the authority to get involved with franchise negotiations? I mean, that would be the question. Do we have, if it's a contract that you've signed with the manufacturers, do we have the right to come in and say, correct that or change it? I don't know how that works. Probably somebody can help me.
I can jump in on this one
Yes,
a
go right
little
ahead.
bit.
Yeah.
So all of the language that we're really talking about, except for the new shipper dealer's license, which doesn't have a home necessarily specified, would be changing the auto dealer franchise chapter in Title IX, which regulates the agreements between dealers and manufacturers. It is very, very, very common, as you heard from Claire, to have language like this in all of the states dealing with relationships between dealers and manufacturers of vehicles, of farm equipment, of other things. If you look in that language, there is in statute, and it's not in the proposal that's been presented, but it does say that the language in Chapter 108 applies to contracts that existed on, I think it's April 1 of 2009, and also would apply to contracts going forwards. You heard Senator Perchlik mention contract clause issues that might come up here. Very simply, the contract clause basically says that states can't interfere with contracts between private entities that exist, but there's a two-part test, and there has been litigation dealing with other relationships between dealers and manufacturers within the motor vehicle realm and within other equipment and farm equipment. So I think that this is something that you probably would want to hear from the manufacturers on in general, but the fact that you are attempting to regulate contracts that have already been entered into is something that I think is going to warrant discussion at some point, and possibly something that's dealt with through effective dates language, or maybe a grandfathering to sort of reach a point where it's not a sort of unreasonable interference with contracts that exist. So that is a very, very simplified version.
This is an interesting subject, and we want to get it right. Now, should this be involved in the Tesla discussion, or should they be separate? How do you think?
I can't weigh in on should this discussion be linked with the Tesla discussion. That's a policy decision for you to make. I can say that I think the contract clause issue as a legal matter is not really applicable there, because you're not changing anything involving contracts between existing entities, because Tesla does not have contracts with dealers or manufacturers. Their business model is to be one and the same.
And refresh my memory one more time. What is Tesla asking for us to do?
Senator Perchlik, do you want to?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that
Yeah.
Tesla is not asking us anything. What I am trying to do is allow those direct-to-consumer manufacturers, and I'm willing to limit it to electric vehicles, but there's more than Tesla. And then Tesla heard about the bill and came in and said, yeah, we support that. They have weighed in and gave us testimony, but the goal is to allow them to open a service center, which is just specifically prohibited in the statute. So the goal is to allow them.
Why is it prohibited in the statute? They can't come open a dealership like anybody else.
They can open a dealership. They can't open a warranty service center, because to protect the dealers, which is a good thing to have in the law, we don't want Ford Motor Company to open a warranty service right next to a local Vermont Ford dealership. So it says manufacturer. And so since Tesla or Rivian or others are manufacturers, they can't open one, so it made sense when we passed it, but at the time we had no direct-to-consumer vehicles of any kind, electric or otherwise. So the goal was just to allow them to do the service center, there was a lot of concerns brought up, like, well, they're not, following all the dealership laws. So they said, fine, we'll be dealers. We'll sign up to be dealers. And I think all the things brought up today about how our local dealers have trouble with the manufacturers are legitimate concerns. And I would support, probably all of them. I think some of them we need more testimony on, but I'm all for like protecting them, like how often they have to fix their showrooms, and, making it clear that, Ford just can't create a new company and say, this is Ford Plus, and we don't need to sell this through the Ford dealership. I think the language presented about affiliated with might be a little broad, but those are the things that we could work on. I'm just concerned that if this was the purpose of the bill, last year they said, oh, there's all these other issues about direct sales and dealership laws, so let's have a study. So we did a study, and that came back with a bunch of information. Nobody suggested at that time, like, okay, now here's some stuff about the franchise law that we want to change. Here's what we learned from the study to make our local dealers better protected. They just still came in and said, no, we don't like the bill. But now they're saying they have a whole bunch of things that they want to add on to the bill. And that's my concern. I would like to do these things. I'm just concerned about adding them to a bill that's unrelated and having it to go to two committees after this committee. So I'm willing either do a different bill or add all these things to this bill as study language, or another way. I'm just worried about adding it to the bill.
Yes, Senator Chittenden.
Well, I don't know if I was going to speak, but thank you, Senator Mazza. Can we do that? Is study language something that is commonly done so that we can commit as part of this bill to dive into these topics and then come back as time allows to take these on and implement them as time goes forward?
Senator Mazza, if I could add to that, I think that we do that all the time, or the legislature does that all the time. But one thing that we could do that might give the dealers a little more confidence than a study language, even though that's what they suggested to our bill last year, is say that we'll put the study language in there, but they have the time to work on this in the House where they have more time and they can take the testimony. And then they can come back to us with this stuff more thought out and, with more testimony. And so it can still be part of the bill, but maybe after the process goes through the House process and it comes back to us in a conference committee.
I heard him mention earlier that some parts maybe could be included in this bill. Which part? Are there any parts that would be included in this bill or no?
I think there are parts that could be included, like if the language about, we have a definition of electric vehicle manufacturer. They had a different definition that they wanted to do for zero emission vehicles. If there's a reason that just definition needs to be different, that's okay. And, I talked to Anthea a little bit just about some tweaks that just kind of fitted in more with our statutes and stuff like that. Some of these things I'm okay with, but I'm just worried about how complicated they get. If there's languages like the last one, 7, seems to be not an issue that would get into like contract clause, constitutional issues where we're just saying, hey, we're being very clear what the manufacturers, how we're protecting the dealers from a manufacturer trying to get around the definition. But even on that, the way they defined it was any affiliation. So what if GM just buys some stock in Tesla? Are they now affiliated with Tesla? So does that prohibit it from Tesla? It's like Ford owns a lot of stock in Rivian. So does that mean Rivian can't do it because Ford owns some of the stock? So affiliated just seems too broad. You basically have to have a judge decide each case whether it met the test or not. So I think some of them could go. We would just need to go back and forth and work on the language and come back to the committee. So it would be better for me if we said, hey, there's a bunch of stuff we need to study to protect our dealers in this new space. Let's commit to studying it. And we're also maybe signaling to the House that we're open to accepting these changes if they can work on them.
Senator Ingalls or Senator Kitchell, I just saw you on the screen. Any questions or comments?
I think that we are kind of equal on a lot of things and kind of divided on the other. And I do feel that the dealers need more protections. I I hear Senator Pershlik as well. I just don't want to compromise the dealer structure on Tesla on this. It's not just a Tesla bill either, and I'd like to get away from that as well. But I don't want to compromise on what the dealers have to put up with just to allow something simpler to come in. But I do believe that as consumers, that Tesla, the people who own electric vehicles, should be able to get their cars serviced here. But I don't know if it's this session that needs to happen, or if we have time to work this all along. I think the car dealers are a little bit late getting into the ball game. I appreciate what they've done as far as putting forth their proposals. There's been some times for them to get that here, and then again, I don't know what the hurry would be, other than if we doubled the amount of electric vehicles here that people have to travel outside the state to get them serviced with. Well, that's not doing very well for our constituents as well. So I see more complexity in this than simply voting on S47. That's for sure.
Senator Kitchell, any comments?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to our last discussion, and that was, we were recognizing the value of our franchise dealers, and it's from everything to supporting community activities. I don't think Elon Musk is going to contribute to the local food shelves at and those kinds of positive contributions as well. So there are advantages and so all of this gets kind of put together. But in our conversation, we were like saying, this is in fact part of the market reality of today. We have consumers that need to have their cars serviced. I don't know whether Tesla would, in the end, for 600 vehicles, or what the threshold would be to open a repair shop. But in our conversation, we were saying, are there ways that we could do some things to help address the pressure and the realities of our franchise dealers that are operating within that market environment relative to this new way of sales? And so our dilemma here is that this is a fairly extensive package of proposals. I think it was our effort to say, are there some things that we could do? It gets back to, I think, what Senator Perchlik said. Are there things that, in fact, out of that package of 7 that align themselves more directly to the goal of getting customers service within the state? And what ones can we look at that list of 7, and what ones might make sense to move now, and which ones in fact get into more complexity? I think ultimately what we're dealing with here historically is, well, can we buy another year of time? And 4 days, I'm just like, how do we take something as significant? I know that probably the manufacturers are going to come in and not offer testimony and not stand up and clap. And so we have the issue of the time, 4 days, the scope of the proposal, and the extent to which we take an issue that has been out here for what is this the 3rd year we've discussed this, Senator Perchlik? I think maybe 2nd year. Do we want to say, oh well, if we can't deal with all the franchise things, do we in fact want to say, well, we don't do anything? And I think that's kind of a hard position to take. So is it possible to look at of that list of 7, which ones, and then have a commitment? Because I do think that there's, at least based on what people are talking about, these are areas that other states have moved forward, felt that there was a need to provide those kinds of protections to dealers, and do it in a time frame that makes sense, because 4 days just is just not possible. So that's just my kind of muddled thinking about what can we move forward here what can we say we agree, but it's going to take more time, and how do we get that kind of affirmative message out? The word study, people are concerned because study means just deferring and not wanting to deal with it. And I don't think that's what we're talking about here. So maybe there's another, again, Thea, you can think of something other than that is a little bit more definitive, because study is usually a euphemism for we don't want to deal with it, so we're going to postpone it.
Bob Cody, any suggestions or thoughts?
Thank you for having me, Senator.
Morning.
Just to make a couple of comments that I've heard around. Tesla is relatively new to us in our state, and there's going to be others, the Rivian, and there's certainly others. China's got quite a big thrust into the electric market. But I'm here representing all of the dealers from VADA. I'm fortunate. My franchises, Cadillac and Chevrolet, are going to be moving forward pretty aggressively in the electric field. We have a Bolt that has been out before the Tesla 3 even hit our ground. And we've heard comments like dealers don't want to sell those things. Of course we do. If I don't sell them, I pay interest on them on my lot. And we try to get as many as we can. And they haven't had the love affair that Tesla has had. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle. Now they're catching on quite well. And I think you'll see in the next year or two, but that's just my dealership. There's several dealerships in this state that aren't going to have that same advantage because they're franchises, they're not right into the electric game as far as General Motors has gotten into it. So I need to speak for them. They have significant investments in the state. They have employees, they pay taxes. This is a bigger part of Vermont than the Tesla customers and consumers that we have in our state. And I want those Tesla consumers to get their vehicles repaired. My good friend of mine owns a Tesla. We do their service work on his vehicle. He does not like the Tesla model. They have to email. It's a pain in the neck for him. So he just comes to us and we deal with it for him. We get the parts from Tesla. They're not that exclusive. Brembo brakes are on pretty much the Chrysler products, the Chevrolet products, the Hondas, Audis, you name them. They're all pretty much similar. My biggest concern is that Claire has brought up some very good proposals that other states already have and we don't have in our state. And is it more important to move forward with pleasing just the consumers of Tesla and not doing anything for the dealers that are already in the state that have been here, my dealership since 1956, that have paid significant taxes and donated many, many thousands of dollars to our local charities, little leagues, you name it. And I'm not the only dealer that does that. Every dealer does that, especially if they're family owned. But I need to speak for all of them because this ground that we're going to come into with the direct consumer, I'll give you one quick example. In the past week, I saw 2 vehicles with Carvana license plates on them, not Vermont state license plates, not even in transit plates. That's totally against our laws in our state of Vermont on Vermont roads. One in Burlington and one here on the Bear Mountain Road. So I'm not a legislator. I don't know how to construct laws or anything, but I do know that if a dealer had done that and we had put a car on the Vermont road without a paper plate, we'd get a violation or we'd be in serious trouble for it. But that's happening now. I'm not making this up. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, okay, Senator Persick, I hear what you're saying. If you want to, it's separate of what you think that this bill should be, I'm okay with that to some extent. But I also will put forth to you that the dealer network in the state of Vermont is much bigger than the consumers that are buying Teslas in the state of Vermont. I would like to see a Tesla building built and have them pay the same taxes I have to pay and be open as many hours as and compete with the same technicians that I have to train and hopefully retain. That's a huge challenge. The reason this is important, the things that Claire has brought up, is because last year we did okay through the pandemic. Most dealers did. But just 2 years ago, pretty much every dealer lost money. That is a fact. And that is a scary thing to think about. that, and if something comes into our state that's direct to consumer, without having to share the same taxes that we have to pay and go through the same things that we have to do, or similar things, then they have an advantage over us. And that's pretty much what so I'm not against what you guys have to do in the next 4 days. What I'm saying is, if you can do that in 4 days, what can you do for us in a very short period of time? And that's
Do
all
you
I have to
think,
say.
Bob,
Thank
there's
you.
anything that's been discussed here this morning that we could do some of those issues that we could do this week and then or study the other ones? What's your thought on, you've heard?
Well, my thought is, I think Claire has done her homework on looking at what other states are already proposed, the 2 states directly right next to us, New Hampshire and New York. I mean, especially right now, since the throughput of vehicles on dealers' lots is really hamstrung by the lack of computer chips and the pandemic. So pretty much every dealer doesn't have very many vehicles on the lot. So customers are going online, and if they want, say, a Chevy Silverado or a Dodge Ram, and they live in our area and they'd like to buy from Mitchell and they'd like to buy from me, but we don't have it, but the dealer in New Hampshire has it in New York, then they go to those dealers then, So there's things I think that Clary's brought up that I think could be, but again, I understand where Senator Purser is coming from, this bill that you guys have been working on. But I'd like to say that I think the dealer association has done our level best to show you that we are important. And I've got many employees in the back that this is what they do. And we're excited because I have Cadillac coming in a couple of weeks to tell me which power chargers I need to put up for their vehicle that's coming out. I already have 4 of them on my lot, but I'll be putting more up. And we're excited. We want to be part of this, but I'm only speaking for my dealership. I have to speak for all of the dealerships, and some of the other franchises don't have that for them. And
Question,
it could put them in financial difficulty.
a question for Bob?
I don't know about for Bob. Senator Perchlik, did you want to jump ahead of me?
Okay, go ahead. Whoever.
Yeah, I just want to say, Mr. Cody, I agree with you, and I'm wanting to help the dealers, all the members. It's really just a process kind of issue. If there was a lot of these concerns, the auto dealers could have brought forth the bill. I'm sure there's 179 legislators that would be happy to sponsor a bill for their local dealers. So as you say, you guys are great local businesses. I'd be happy to do that. The issue is nobody did that. Nobody said, here's the issues our local dealers are facing. Please help us with this bill. That didn't happen. What happened was, we don't like your bill. But we said, okay, we know it's a little difficult for you to have this new kind of company coming in and competing. So we're willing to add some things to it that are helpful. I just thought they were going to be kind of, as Senator Kitchell said, a little more digestible. This was served up a pretty big meal at this time. That's really my issue. Not that I have any problem with helping the dealers. So I just wanted to be clear on that point.
Senator Chittenden.
So on that point, I just want to echo everything I heard Senator Kitchell say earlier, is where my impression of this is. And I think I didn't hear straight objections to the original S47. It seems like that's a reasonable approach. But what I'd like to just put into the conversation and see if this is feasible, I like number 1 and number 7. They seem directly addressable or connectable to S47. And I did private chat, and Thea, if you want to chime in here, and Thea, it seems like you see this as those two as most directly associated to S47. So if we were to move forward with something, I would love to, as understanding crossover, consider by Friday either the original S47 or a merging of 1 and 7 into a new S47 to address the concerns we've been hearing. I don't know if that's possible or where the rest of the committee is, but I like 1 and 7 to possibly consider into language for S47.
Bob Cody, go right ahead.
Thank you, Senator. Just to be clear, in all due respect, Senator Perchlik, in all of our discussions with the dealer group, nobody has ever said, we don't like your bill. In any of the dealer meetings we've had, not one dealer has spoken up and said, we don't like your bill. We just are concerned about how that bill is going to play in the state of Vermont. That nobody's ever said that. I just want to be very clear about that.
Okay, all right. Next, who do we have an answer for Senator Chittenden's question about 1 and 7? That was the discussion.
Marilyn's got her
Mar-
hand up.
Oh, Marilyn, I can't see. Okay, go ahead, Marilyn.
Thanks, Senator. I just wanted to clarify. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify for Senator Perchlik, and maybe this makes us sound like a bunch of chickens, and we probably are. But one of the reasons we haven't touched the franchise law since 2009 is, to be perfectly honest, one of our greatest fears is our adversaries who will come in and we will lose what we have. And so it seemed, I know this is, it seemed like this would be a good time to try to upgrade our franchise law since you were talking about DTCs. But to be perfectly honest, we would have been in, we are, the franchise law, as you know, as I think you're getting a sense, is our strongest and most important asset. And so we don't open it up lightly. We don't try to make changes lightly because of the relationship between dealers and manufacturers. So I just wanted to clarify that. So anyway,
Marilyn, what if the committee made a commitment to get further discussion on these issues with the manufacturers and have a discussion with everyone? You think that would be helpful?
I think that would be great. I do think it would be really helpful if, as a couple of folks have mentioned, there are some things that you might be comfortable with including now, and then we could come back.
Then we'd make a commitment to continue our discussion with everyone who's involved, whether it's the manufacturers or the dealers. And because it is a discussion, one of the things we always prided ourselves in is the dealers of Vermont. I don't have to repeat it. They do so much for the communities, and they offer a lot of all kinds of volunteerism and everything else. So we want to make sure, but I sense we don't have enough time this week. But I also sense there may be a couple items we can do. And I don't know that, but that's why I'm asking the committee for some help here. Is there something we can do and yet continue our discussion, promise in the months ahead that we can take up this other items?
That we would obviously be most appreciative of that.
Any thoughts from the committee on this? I'm just opening this up for discussion. Yes, Senator Perchlik, Senator Chittenden, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I like Senator Chittenden's suggestion, and I think we could also not only do 1 and 7, but we could add in language about the other, 2 through 6 in the bill, either teeing it up for the House or teeing it up for, or something other than a study, as Senator Kitchell said, because we don't want to be signaling that we're just studying it. So if Anthea has time, would be willing to work with her to get some language by tomorrow that the committee and the dealers can look at.
Senator Chittenden, you had some comment? Go ahead.
That sounds very reasonable to me, and so I support that direction.
Any other committee member have any input at this time?
Well, I like doing as much this combination because it does recognize that the bill, when it goes to the House, there's an opportunity for more time and maybe some other parts of the 1 through 7 list, people would feel with the benefit of more time, because we're dealing with crossover, could in fact be incorporated in the bill. And that's something that the chairs, you can discuss with the chair of House Transportation, is the recognition that time was a real problem for us, and getting a bill that moves it forward and then would allow the House the opportunity to give consideration for the other provisions, and then it would come back to us, obviously later on in the session. But I think it allows that opportunity and the time. I think the time is really the big pressure point here. I assume, Senator Mazza, you have good relationships with the new chair of transportation in the House and can have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I would love to talk to her and continue this. I make a commitment. We don't drop this discussion. It's important, but I also know the time limitation we have, and I think it's been a good discussion, and we certainly want to help the dealers any way we can. So if we could have something that we could all agree on in the next day or so, I think it would be something we could proceed with. Yes, Marilyn.
I just wanted to add that we very much appreciate the time and the effort that you put in to, work with us on this. And I also want to go on record as saying that we are big supporters of disco balls.
Okay. All right. Yes, anything else this morning before we move on to our next discussion, and we'll get back together as time-
Anthea's hand is up.
Yes, Anthea, I can't see it. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just looking for some guidance on my marching orders. It sounds
Okay.
like I should work on incorporating 1 and 7 into draft language that's sort of formatted in the way and structured in the way that we put things in statute.
Yeah, I'd like to have you work with Claire probably and Senator Pertlick probably and see if we get some thoughts together that we could review. Would that be
Okay.
something the committee would okay, or?
And I assume, Claire, you would be amenable to be sending you some language?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Was that all right? Okay.
So I do have a question of Bob Cody.
Yeah.
Because obviously the issue around maintenance, but you were saying, in fact, you are servicing these other vehicles as just as part of your business. Is that a fairly common? And I know certainly there are a few used Teslas on the market out there that Vermont dealers are obviously have in their inventory. I was just wondering if what you do in terms of your service support is unique to you, or it's fairly commonplace, so that in fact this group of Vermont owners of these vehicles have access to repairs.
Yeah, well, the situation for me is that this is a personal friend of mine that buys everything else he owns is a Chevrolet, so it just makes it easier for him. But there is another dealer, Jack Castelletta. He has a friend that does the same thing, and out of convenience. The difficulty is sometimes there's a little bit of a lag time getting the parts. We do the same thing. It's easier for them. They drop the vehicle off, and we give them a vehicle to use, and because they've been good customers. I don't know that it's. I'd have to talk to the people in the tire business in the stores, because that's pretty much, except for brakes and tires and windshield wipers, electric cars don't really need a lot of maintenance. And if there's something bigger like a door handle or something that malfunctions, that's probably better for a Tesla engineer at this point. But like I said, we're pretty fortunate. We have electric cars now, so we pretty much understand them, and we've been servicing them for some time. But that's Chevrolet and General Motors. The other manufacturers are coming along. Ford will be on very shortly with their Mustang. And but yeah, I guess I'm going about a long way, but I don't know that. I think it will become more and more as more Teslas are in the state of Vermont.
You got any parts for 1927? I think Senator Kitchell has a 27. What is this, Ford, or what kind of Senator Kitchell?
No, I have a Model T,
Model T, yeah.
1923.
Yeah,
Yes.
is the warranty still good on that? Anybody know? Or-
I certainly. In fact, we have these new 3D printers that can just about rebuild it.
Well, and she's been
Thank you for your
rebuilt.
time today. You guys are wonderful, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're going to work on it, we promise. And
Thank you.
so
That's all we can ask.
Well, that's good. I thank everybody for coming together on this issue, and we'll try to get back together as soon as possible with our thoughts. And any other committee member wants to offer some input, just call Anthea, and we'll see if we can't make some progress. Thanks again for everyone this morning. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to, if you want to take a break, but we have a full noon time. Do you want to continue on right now?
What
Yes.
is the next item?
Next item is electric bicycles.
I was just going to say, Senator Mazza, I have to walk over to the State House to count ballots for the joint
Oh,
session.
that's right. You got to go over there.
But I have to leave just so like 10 minutes to 12 or something. I can't go right to 12 because I have to get over there to do that. But I
Okay,
can.
so you got a few
Okay.
minutes now? All right.
So why don't we just keep going?
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, Liz, go right ahead. We'll get as much as we can done on S66, an act relating to electric bicycles. And I think Senator Campion, I think, is our lead.
Right, let me grab him. Hold on, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I haven't read the bill.
I have not either. I don't know what it is.
All right, Senator Perchlik and Senator Chittenden, have you read the bill?
Yeah, sure. There you go. Yeah.
I did.
I've been too busy spending $1 billion.
1.3 billion. Come on, let's
Oh,
get it right. Yeah, okay.
Well, we want 0.3 billion for electric bikes.
Yeah, right.
Well, you can stand in line after state colleges, our mental health system, weatherization, et
Almost.
cetera.
Yeah.
Now, we got enough weatherization. We got Efficiency Vermont that gives all that money away.
We just
Oh,
give
they
them
don't,
bikes. Yeah.
Okay, how are we coming? Let's see.
Well, do we need to hear from Campion?
no.
Okay, let's go. Anthea, you got.
We could have Dylan or Alex tell us about the bill, I'm sure.
Can someone tell us about the bill?
I can do a walkthrough.
Sure, right, that's
yeah.
good. Anthea, let's go. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to put my share screen up.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is S66, which is posted to the committee page for today. Before I do the walkthrough, I'm just going to do a little big picture. So the main premise of this bill is to define electric bicycle. That happens in section 4. It is also amending the definition of motor assisted bicycle to cover only those motor assisted bicycles with an internal combustion motor, to distinguish them from this new vehicle mode that we're defining as an electric bicycle. That's in section 3. And then explicitly excludes electric bicycle from the definitions of motorcycle in section 1, motor vehicle in section 2, motor driven cycle in section 3, and motor assisted bicycle in section 3, and ATVs in section 8 and 9. So you're going to see so much where we're just slightly tinkering with definitions that exist in Title 23, section 4 already. And then it also is including electric bicycle in the definition of vulnerable user in section 5, which is consistent with how we treat regular bicycles, non-electric bicycles. And then in section, or the fifth thing it does is establishing a regulatory framework for electric bicycles with the general premise that they are treated like bicycles unless otherwise specified, and then deals with some restrictions on where they can be used. So that's your big picture.
Anthea, I'm trying to go back and storm my feeble brain, but we had mopeds, and we spent a lot of time differentiating based on the motor, the speed, et cetera. I'm just trying to understand what this. So we've got that, which I would have thought would have excluded e-bikes. So I'm just trying to. Could you just put this in some context of what we have now and what we're trying to address here?
I can do the beginning of that, and then I think you probably have someone from People for Bikes who knows more about this technology. So you're referencing, and this is, you'll see this language in section 3, the definition of motor-driven cycle, which is probably going to cover most of what you think of as a moped. And then carved out of that is motor-assisted bicycle. And one of the things that this bill is doing is sort of further carving away from that. And while under our existing definition, I think an electric bicycle would fall under the definition of motor-assisted bicycle because it is equipped with a motor and it has a power output of not more than. We don't specify lower tiers. So it's amending the definition of motor assisted bicycle to say that motor assisted bicycles are ones that have an internal combustion engine, internal combustion motor, whereas these other ones are electric exclusively. And then within the definitions that are getting added for electric bicycle, there are 3 tiers, and they relate to when the motor is kicked in with pedal assist and maximum speeds. And then the regulatory scheme is different depending on the classes slightly. So I think what is happening, from a very 30,000 feet perspective is we now have this new mode of transportation, an electric bicycle. And I think it is inadvertently being absorbed into other definitions. And this is an attempt to carve it out fully, define it, and say how it's going to be treated even within tiers of electric bicycle.
So we're going to have different treatment depending on class 2 and 3 of electric bicycles, or is this just more definitional?
So class 3 has different requirements for purposes of labeling and who can use it. And then also distinctions with respect to where certain types, classes of electric bicycles can be prohibited by the state or a municipality or local authority.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So there is a reason for the different classifications. It's not just have extra definitions for the sake of extra definitions.
Well, I would think so, but
Sometimes we just like to define things.
May I ask a question on classifications?
Yep, go right ahead.
So I was expecting to see a weight differential because when I think of e-bikes in South Burlington, again, not to be parochial, but we have struggled with bikes that can go on the recreation paths and bikes that have to stay on the street. So I don't see any weight difference. I see it for ATVs, but I don't see in class 1, 2, or 3 weight limits. Is that intentional or is that something that's worth discussing?
I think that's probably a question for the people on here who know more about bikes.
What do you mean, the weight of the bike or the weight of the person on the bike?
Just the bike.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk about the people.
So they weigh the bicycle?
Well, I think of a moped, and if I'm thinking of a recreation path where you've got strollers and people running and jogging, there's a certain weight at a certain speed, which is going to be much more dangerous than what I've seen with these ped assist bikes, which are really just mountain bikes with a little electric motor to help going uphill. So I thought weight would be a factor.
We have a couple folks here. I don't know, Senator Campion would like to speak first, or who would you like, Senator? Good morning.
Sure, I'm happy to just say a few words.
Sure, go right
and
ahead.
then go back to Senate Natural. Thanks for having me. For the record, Senator Brian Campion, Bennington County and Wilmington. I just wanted to let the committee know that, I put this bill in with the hopes that it would expand the use of these kinds of bikes for recreational purposes, but also just for general transportation purposes. There seem to be some, states seem to be moving in a maybe faster direction around clarifying and classifying these bikes. I think CSG may have even done a little piece in a magazine about how different states were doing this. And it just seemed that it might be time to bring this up to the Committee on Transportation. So I just wanted to give you the genesis of it for me. I know there are people who are going to be talking after I speak that know a lot more about this and will help direct you, but just wanted to give you, again, the context from where I am sitting.
Any questions for Senator Campion before he has to go back to his committee?
So I do have a question, Brian. I guess maybe it's back to what Senator Chitton was talking about. Some of our bike trails, and Lamoille Valley Rail Trail is an example, where other than when you have the snowmobile, when it's snow on the ground in the trail, it's for non-motorized use. So I know that there's been always a certain amount of tension where other users or motorized and whatever, ATVs are certainly one, but maybe other motorized. At what point do you differentiate what's permissible for that particular use for recreational versus other uses, which might be more commuting, replacement, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, are we opening up that discussion around non-motorized and how the use of the users of these trails might feel? It's almost reminiscent. What did we in Burlington where we ended up not the helmets? Remember that? And you could and we discovered it was just a huge area of controversy and safety, et cetera. So I'm just wondering how that fits in, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. It's a great question. I hadn't given thought to whether or not it was going to open up some of these other questions and controversies that we've experienced in the past. And it seems to me like there might be ways to work, keeping that in mind, to work around those kinds of things. But I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Zwicky or others can, who probably have given this a little bit more thought, might be best to weigh in on that. But I appreciate the question.
Zwicky, would you like to comment?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For the record, Dylan Zwicky with Leonine Public Affairs. I'm here this morning on behalf of our client, People for Bikes. And I really want to give the opportunity to turn it over to Alex from People for Bikes, who really is the subject matter expert in this. But just to kind of frame this issue for the committee, before I start, there are 2 documents on the committee webpage that are submitted in connection with our testimony here this morning. The first is just a formal written testimony that includes some frequently asked questions. Some of the questions that have come up may be addressed in there. I'm sure Alex will get into it as well. The second is sort of a graphic document that tries to clarify what we are talking about, as Senator Kitchell had raised, the distinction between what we mean when we talk about electric bicycles or e-bikes and mopeds or scooters, as the committee dealt with a few years ago, and dirt bikes, for example. So there is a benefit to having that clarity in statute, as Senator Campion had indicated. The 3-class system is something that a number of states have already advanced, moved forward, and does provide that clarity for a number of different stakeholders. So, I'm really excited that the committee has taken the time to look at this bill. E-bikes are a neat addition to the suite of transportation tools that Vermonters can access. As a state that relies heavily on tourism and the outdoor recreation economy, e-bikes are a fantastic tool for expanding access for Vermonters and visitors to our state who want to get out and enjoy all that the state has to offer. We appreciate the community taking the time to look at the bill. Just at a very high level, it provides some regulatory clarity for e-bikes to consumers and riders of bikes, to bike shops that are trying to sell these bikes, and to the localities that may want to have some say over where e-bikes can and cannot be used. To Senator Kitchell's question about the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, the bill does allow for local agencies, municipalities to regulate whether or not e-bikes can be used on their trails, and whether or not specific classes can be used. So it may be that the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail wants to allow e-bikes, but does not want to allow mopeds. This bill would give them that regulatory clarity. It may be that they want to allow just class 1 e-bikes, but not class 3 e-bikes. It would allow them to do that. And so we think
they can't do that now.
I think it would be, they would have to develop their own framework, and they could pursue this 3-tier framework that's laid out in the bill and that is modeled in other states. Senator Chittenden had raised this question of the weight of bikes. That may be the way that we define other types of common vehicles, but this 3-tier framework is one that has been sort of thought out and adapted in other states, and does provide clarity. And I think Alex can get into this as well. There are federal definitions of e-bikes, and so it's important for the state to be in line with federal standards for electric bicycles for consumer protection and safety purposes. And so this is kind of the framework that works across the country. And we would encourage the state of Vermont and this committee to adopt that framework.
You have to wear a helmet on an electric bike?
The state of Vermont does not currently require riders of foot-powered bicycles to ride bikes, and this bill does not seek to change that for electric bicycles.
Curious. Okay, who else wants to comment at this time? Do we have Alex? Is that?
We do, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to go forward if that'd be all right.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for allowing me to testify in support of Senate Bill 66 today. From a big picture today, if I could leave the committee with any takeaways on the bill, I'd say the bill is really about 3 major things. It's about modernizing the Vermont law to embrace the products that are in the marketplace today. It's about harmonizing Vermont law with federal law and the laws of other states. And it's about providing more clarity and more certainty to folks in Vermont, retailers in Vermont, about what an e-bike is, where it can be ridden, and how exactly it's regulated, and the rights and duties of e-bike riders. I am, for the record, my name is Alex Logeman. I'm here on behalf of the People for Bikes Coalition. We are the national trade association for suppliers, manufacturers, and distributors of all types of bicycle products So we're not e-bike specific. Our members cover the full range of both bicycles and, components, accessories, other types of bicycle products on the marketplace. And we have been leading this initiative to reform electric bicycle regulation in the United States for about 6 years now. I've been with the organization that whole time and have worked on the project for that whole time. A little bit more information on just trying to, I think, solidify what an e-bike is. Mr. Zwicky referenced the documents that have been uploaded to the site. One of those documents is a graphic, if you will, of the three types of e-bikes and how those contrast with other types of vehicles that are commonly used out on the roads. And as I think you'll see from that graphic, e-bikes are very bike-like in their appearance, and they are equipped with identical, often case, components to regular bikes. So you'll see the same types of shifters, the same types of grips, the same types of handlebars. The frame might be engineered a little bit more robustly to handle the motor and the battery, but for the most part, they're extremely bike-like. The major difference is the presence of the motor, which you'll see either in the rear hub or what we call the bottom bracket area, which is where the crank arms are inserted into sort of the bottom of the frame there. A battery, which is usually mounted on the frame or above the rear wheel, and then an electronic control system that enables the rider to adjust their level of assist, turn it off and on, see the battery level, things like that. How fast can they go? This was already covered, but class 1 and 2 can go up to 20 miles per hour, and class 3 can go up to 28 miles per hour. And they operate in either a pedal assist or a throttle assist mode. With a pedal assist style bike, which would be class 1 and 3, you must be pedaling for the motor to engage. And as soon as you stop pedaling, the motor will disengage. For a class 2 electric bicycle, it is equipped with a throttle that enables you to go up to 20 miles per hour. This is in conformance with federal electric bicycle standards. So you don't need to be pedaling at all times to use that bike, but you can. And as you can see from the images as well of that class 2 bike, it is also designed like a bike designed to be pedaled. In terms of who's riding these products and what the marketplace looks like today, it's a fast growing category. Sales are growing over 100% each year. Early on, it was a lot of older folks, probably age 50 was the most frequent demographic purchasing these bikes for recreation, but it's that is flattening out across age groups a lot. And there's a lot more adoption of e-bikes for transportation amongst people ages, 20 to 40 or so, taking their families around, using it for short trips, that sorts of things. I personally own a class 1 e-bike and use it for those exact reasons. In terms of the bill, I think a little bit of historical context would be really helpful for the committee to understand how we sort of got here. E-bikes were first regulated at the federal level about 20 years ago. And the major decision that was made there was because they had a motor, would they be regulated like bicycles, which the Consumer Product Safety Commission regulates, or would they be regulated like motor vehicles, which are regulated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration? And that decision was made by Congress. And e-bikes as defined were placed under the jurisdiction of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So that definition allows both pedal and throttle assist bikes, and then provides a maximum wattage of 750. What happened after that was that the states started integrating electric bicycles into their traffic laws, but it didn't happen in a coordinated way. Our industry wasn't very active at the state legislative level in that early 2000 timeframe. And so the laws ended up being quite diverse. Some states adopted the CPSC definition, some tweaked it, some kind of made their own definitions. And so the industry was left in a place where an electric bicycle that you manufactured to meet federal safety standards, product safety standards, might not actually be compliant everywhere, or additional products that weren't e-bikes under federal law might also be within the scope of those laws, as is the case in Vermont today with that 1,000-watt limitation. So, as our industry saw this aspect of the market really primed to take off, we saw the need for greater standardization, and that's where the class system came from. So we really wanted to define the core types of products that are in the marketplace today. In terms of why there are so many classes, it's a great question. We always get that question. There's a few different reasons. I think the reason for distinguishing between class 1 and class 3 is very obvious. There's a significant speed differential there that's noteworthy. And it is logical that we should be able to differentiate those products and that local governments can differentiate those products, particularly when thinking about how to address off-street use. The difference between class 1 and class 2 is not always quite as relevant, I think, in the traffic context, because I think we're unlikely to see significant variations in how class 1 and class 2 e-bikes get treated, on the road or on improved infrastructure. Where we will see changes in the future is more of the off-trail application of these types of products. And that's already happening today. There's a lot of work around class 1, what we call electric mountain bike use. And our goal here has really been to create common terminologies so that everybody's speaking the same language when we talk about these different types of products. There's also a labeling provision in the bill that's before you that requires e-bikes to be labeled according to their class, speed, and wattage. The industry is already compliant with that. This is the law in 28 other states already. So if you walk into a bike shop in Vermont tomorrow, you'll see these labels already on the bicycles. In terms of weight limitations, that is something we have absolutely given thought to. Our take is that at this point, given the wattage limitations and the speeds of the product, we haven't really needed to go down that road of trying to specify a weight, because you're going to be limited in what you're really capable of doing by the wattage of the bike itself. Another, I'd say, concern we have about trying to specify it at the state level is I anticipate our industry having continued discussion with the Consumer Product Safety Commission about additional electric bicycle product safety standards as the market proliferates. And we've referenced those in the law. So I would think our goal would be that the state sort of automatically adopts any changes we make at the federal level through the bills that we've put forth at the state legislative level. And that might be one of the areas that gets addressed, though I can't be certain of that. Another question that came up was distinctions between e-bikes and other types of, I think, low-powered kind of two-wheeled devices that are already defined in Vermont law. And as I think Legislative Council described, this bill is trying to separate e-bikes a little bit from those other types of products. As it stands today, that term motor-assisted bicycle allows for higher-powered devices than we would allow under the bill. There's 1,000 watt or 1.3 horsepower limitations. That's sort of 1.5 to 2 times what the threshold for an e-bike is under federal law, and we'd like to align with federal law. The other thing we're seeing is e-bikes are going to be permitted to be used in a lot of places where combustion powered vehicles aren't, because e-bikes don't have emissions and are relatively silent. And so you'll see land management agencies, local governments, those types of entities creating different rules for e-bikes based on their characteristics than you will for other types of vehicles. And so having a definitional distinction there will help facilitate those types of issues.
Alex, I hate to interrupt, but I think we Senator Perchik has to leave, right? At this time, but I think we've lost Senator Ingalls, so they both had to go elsewhere. So I think we're going to have to stop discussion this morning on this issue at this point, because we're going to lose 2 members of our committee. Sorry about that, but I didn't know that we were, it's more involved than I thought. So with that, we'll have to continue this discussion at a later time. So Liz, I'm going to just stop it right now, and we'll